Hello, Brian McCarthy here from Bold&Break. Delighted to be back with a tutorial, which I think this one is quite fun and it's pretty quick, pretty straightforward, and you're going to learn a bunch of techniques along the way. Here is what we will be creating. Before we jump into the tutorial, I'd like to ask you to consider becoming a Bold&Break member on the YouTube channel. It unlocks a bunch of perks and only starts from £1, and there are 2 more tiers with even more perks. And if you pay the £1 a month, you gain instant access to at least 1 working file of your choice for free. So go on the Bold&Break store, have a look at something that you might like, and if you decide after 1 month the membership isn't for you, just cancel it. You can keep your working file, no hassle. The working file for this tutorial will be on the Bold&Break store. Be sure to check it out. It'll be in the description below. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, all those good things, help out the channel. Enough plugging, let's get started. Press Shift C and type in landscape. Change your Y size to 400, width segments to 500, depth segments to 500, rough furrows to 0, and the fine furrows to 0. Make sure you turn off multifractional and maybe put the sea level to 10, 11. And create a null, call this archive or backup, stick your landscape object into this and duplicate this landscape object because we're going to have to make it editable. So Control, hold and drag, or you can press Control C, Control V. Let's turn off this null. If we turn that off and on, we can't see our object, so there is no confusion. Make this landscape object editable. Select all the polygons, right click, select plane cut. We are going to now cut down this object on the Y axis. To do that, we need to change the plane mode to world and the plane to XZ. Put the number of cuts to 100. Not actually 100 is too much, maybe 50. And put the spacing to 5. And make sure you're still in that plane cut mode, and you will see that you can cut directly through this landscape object. Instead, maybe let's put the spacing to 20. Let's just play with that spacing a bit. Yeah, I think that could work. And just kind of search for something that's a little bit interesting and make sure that you have select cuts on before you cut the object. That is important because you'll cut the object and then you go, I have to select all these, and if you just had that selected, it would select them automatically. So this is cool, has a nice shape to it. Let's select our edges. And now we have those cuts selected. Let's right click and select edge to spline. That spline becomes a child of the landscape object. Let's put it out. Delete your landscape object. And now we have our object here. Make sure you go back into the model mode, press T and scale that right down. We want to start building some visual elements that complement this and just bring it to life a bit more. So press Shift C and type in plane, put the width segments to 5, height segments to 5, width 600 and the height 600. Bring in an atom array. Make this plane a child of the atom array. Select your atom array, put the sphere radius to 1 and put the cylinder radius to 0.1 and get this plane, copy it again. So Control drag or Control C, Control V. Put your width segments to 10 and your height segments to 10 and bring in another atom array, new plane that you've duplicated into this atom array, and put the sphere radius to 1 and the cylinder radius to 0. Okay, so basically what I've done is I've copied that plane and doubled the segments and only given it a sphere radius in the atom array. And what that does is it perfectly aligns a sphere to the center of each box, but we want to add a bit more variety to the scene. We're going to get a sphere. Let's just put this down to 1 for now, maybe 10. Let's put it to 10 and bring in a cloner object, which is here. Put the sphere under the cloner object, put the count to 30, 1, 30, the size to 15, 10, 15. Oh, that's meant to be 30. Maybe bring it to 40 so we can actually cover the whole grid. Now we want to change the size of the radius of that sphere to maybe 0.3. And we have now filled up each box with an even number of spheres. They're too uniform, and we can change that, of course, with a random effector. So let's turn off position, put on scale, uniform scale, maybe 0.5 could do here. And I mean, if you want, to change the variety, bring the Y to 0, maybe X to 1, 1, and it just kind of shakes up that grid. But I like the kind of structure of the grid system, so I'm going to keep the position ticked off so you don't change that. And this is great. We have our general structure for this scene. Okay, to add a bit more control and variety to this, we're going to bring in a Mo spline, and that just gives you options if you want to animate this kind of geometric system. We could put our landscape spline under our Mo spline, but we still have to change some parameters in the Mo spline to get this working. First, we want to change our mode to spline, and then we want to bring our source spline and just make sure it's the source spline here. You can see that is working nicely. Just a note, if you're using Redshift renderer for this, the width of the Mo spline will not affect how it looks in the render view. Let's actually turn on our render view and start looking at this. You will see our landscape spline is missing from the scene. Just for visual reference, let's bring down the width to 0.5. And how do we get our spline to render in the Redshift render view? We need to right click on our spline, go down to render tags, select RS object, and the curve panel will appear automatically. Put the mode to cylinder, and now our splines are appearing. Let's change the thickness to 0.5. Just maybe bring this down. This will affect the thickness along the spline. It will give it a fall off. Hold control, and on this graph pick a middle point, and you will see why I've done this, because this will allow us just control over the spline. Try somewhere in the middle, bring that up, and you just get a variety of thickness. Now we're not really seeing much of this due to, we don't have our materials on or any lights really in our scene. So let's start looking at that now and create a material. There are a few ways we can build out the shader, but the most simple and straightforward way to get these lines glowing is just use the incandescent material. And we're going to go for a light teal color here, a little bit of green. It's good to mix your colors so you get an idea of what you're actually looking for. Let's apply this to the Mo spline object, and you can see here we are getting those lines self-illuminating. If we change the intensity multiplier, we get more luminance, but we lose some of that color. Just be aware of that. Let's bring it back down to 1 for now. Let's copy our RS teal, put this to maybe a light blue, double click on this material and look to add, maybe just bring up the hue towards a more bluish color. Let's stick the light blue onto our atom array. I do think that's too far away from the teal that we originally had, so let's bring up the green a little bit to push back towards that teal, but we're still getting variety. Let's create another incandescent material. Apply this to our cloner. The important part of this is the Redshift camera, which will, the parameters in this will really start to bring the aesthetic that you saw in the preview. Something that you can do to just control the camera and control where you want the camera to be is to just bring this up. And where is actual our camera? Find where your camera is in the scene. We have this sphere here. Let's bring this to 50 maybe. We want to right click on our camera, go to the animation tags, put in target, and use the sphere as a target object. And as you move this sphere, you move the camera, and this will affect our depth of field also. Let's turn off the sphere, but remember, if you have the sphere selected and you move it, it'll still move where the camera is focused. Now for the depth of field to work, we have our object panel here. Let's bring our sphere in there. Okay, so we have our sphere in the object panel for depth of field. Let's turn on bokeh. Let's bring it down to 1 to see if it's working, and it is working. Let's bring this maybe up to 3.5 for now, which is more like a real world camera. We can also move our spline around here. Maybe bring it just a bit closer to the camera, just to add more variety in our scene. We're going to duplicate this Mo spline Just crunch a bit there to the side. I'm going to duplicate it again, rotate it, just so we have some backdrop, so the scene doesn't feel as empty. Scale that up a bit. And we can also go to our original mouse spline and maybe just change the scale of that a little, or bring it up even. Play with the look and feel. Go back into your RS camera. We can pull that back a little bit and we can really start playing with the bokeh. Maybe bring this down to 2. And if we go all the way down to 0.1, you'll start to see a real blur emerge. So bring it down to 50. Pull the camera just back a little bit. And we're starting to get that look that you've seen in the preview, which is very cool. And you see the bokeh here really start to show how it looks with these cloners. So this is another reason I've used these cloners. And as you go into your random effector, and if we put this up to 2, you'll get like bigger, blurrier circles, and you could change the amount and stuff, which is very cool. Another thing that is worth noting, that if you go into your bokeh panel here and you start to change the aspect, you really can get some interesting looks by changing that aspect. You can make it a more oval shape. You can even stretch it 1.5. That is changing that aspect ratio. I'm gonna keep it 1 for now. And that spherical aberration is really interesting too, because you get a really nice fall off here. You get these almost ring-like objects in your bokeh. Let's just put it to 2 for now. Set some variety. And then you can change the blades of your lens. So this is acting as if this is a real lens. So the more blades I add, the more circular it will be, the more smooth. If I go 3 blades, you get these triangle shapes because it's only giving 3 sides to the blade. If I go 8, you get kind of a jagged circle a little bit. So just be aware of that. We're going to keep it on circular, and you can also bring in a custom bokeh image. What we really need to start doing is look at the post effects now. So here you have your little panel. Open that up. Let's just make this window much bigger. Zoom in, put on streak, and bring down the threshold, and you start to get those edges looking good. Pull back our landscape object just a tad here. It looks a bit better. I'm just going to scale that up slightly. I'm going to scale up the other 2. Yes, there we go. So we just get that kind of like mountain look to these 2 mouse splines. I'm going to bring it into view a bit better. Let's bring in bloom. Of course, we need some bloom here. It is more than necessary, and we want to bloom out these edges. I do think the bokeh isn't focusing on everything, so let's bring that up to maybe 100. The sphere, it's not changing much. Let's just change your aperture maybe to 2. Go back into your redshift tag. These lines might be a bit thin. Let's bring it up to 1 here, and I think that works better. If you want to change these to 1 as well, do so. Select both these handles here and just pull this up a little bit. Start to maybe move our sphere a little bit this way, bringing our camera in, and this is all about just tweaking just to get that look that you want. Mess around with these values, you'll get different brightness. You start to get these tails on the streak, which is quite nice. Bring them down if you don't like them. And a big thing to start to play with here is definitely the intensity of your incandescent material. So the more intensity, the more luminance and brightness you get in that material. You can also bring down the alpha to that. So if I bring that to 0.5, you'll still keep the intensity, but it will be a little bit more transparent. Again, if I bring down the intensity on the teal, but we want to kind of bring that up, bring up to 4, and then we can actually bring our bloom threshold back up, and you'll start to see here that 2 down the bloom threshold. So you can see it's a lot of tweaking and playing to get different looks. Let's bring the alpha to 0.8 on this, so we get some transparency, and we can also offset the focus, which is very cool as well. Bring our camera up a little bit, and that is looking much better from an angle perspective. And bring down these 2 mouse splines. Objects, make it look like it's somewhat connected, and maybe move our sphere And this is just me tweaking most of the time now, just positioning the camera differently, changing the values, changing the aperture, 0.1. And when I put the aperture right down, you get this beautiful blurry effect, 0.5, 0.8 again. And that blur, you see these lines fade off, which is quite nice. So I'm going to leave it there. I've gone into a tutorial about incandescent materials. I'm going to put that into the description below. It's a great reference point if you want to make a more custom, bespoke incandescent material, kind of with different values that do different things. I appreciate you watching the tutorial. Thank you for tuning in. Please remember to like, subscribe. Please consider becoming a member of the Bold&Break YouTube channel. And the working file is available in the link below. Thank you for watching and goodbye.